Hello, everybody. You're reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy, and we're reading the analysis, part 2 of 2 parts of an analysis of The Minister's Black Veil by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Let's begin. We left off after one day. We saw a church service, we saw a funeral, we saw a wedding, and Mr. Hooper, the Reverend Hooper, appeared with a black veil on his face. And that threw everybody into a tizzy, right? And that's where we left off. Yet, though so well acquainted, we left off with people, no one asks him why he's wearing this veil. With his amiable weakness among the Britishers, right? There was a feeling of dread. Dread, oh my God. No one wanted to talk to him about this. Plainly confessed nor carefully concealed, which caused each to shift the responsibility upon, you do it, no, you do it. Till at length it was found expedient to send a deputation of the church to deal with Mr. Hooper about the mystery. So not one of them would do it, so they decided to put a bunch of people, let's go and talk to him, in order to find out about what the hell's going on, before it should grow into a scandal. Jeez, God forbid, right? Never did an embassy so ill discharge its duties, says the third-person narrator. In other words, you already can tell they're not going to succeed. Hooper received them with friendly courtesy, but became silent. After they were seated, leaving it to the visitors a burden of introducing the important business. I want to call your attention to silence. Silence is a devastating weapon. Used properly, silence is an enormous thing. Not responding, just staying silent. One of the things in salespeople like to talk. I got to talk. I got to close the deal. But if they really, a super salesman uses silence to his or her advantage. You wait for a response. How long would this deputation sit there with Mr. Hooper in silence? Personally, Jimmy thinks, Hooper was prepared to sit there. No, don't take this the wrong way, till hell freezes over. He's, who's controlling the situation? Let's continue. So the topic, it might be supposed important. The topic, it might be supposed obvious enough. Look over here. This is the elephant in the room. You've heard that saying, the elephant in the room. What does that mean? Well, that's the major problem or controversial issue that's obviously present, but avoided as a subject for discussion because it is more comfortable to avoid it. They don't want to talk about it. That's the elephant in the room. You know what the elephant in the room here is, don't you, ladies and gentlemen? It's that veil. It's the veil. There was the black veil around his forehead and concealing every feature above his mouth, which at times they could perceive the glimmering of a melancholy smile. He's smiling again. Melancholy smile. It's not like, hey, everybody, how you doing? It's just a slight melancholy smile. But that crape, to their imagination, seemed to hang down before his heart. To their imagination, I told you in the beginning of this series, if you were with me, the reason I started this whole website is because your imagination, yours, hopefully, yours, is more powerful than any movie producer, movie director, movie writer, game writer. Your imagination can conjure up all sorts of things. And sometimes as we grow older, we lose that. We lose that ability to imagine. Well, these people had no social media. They had no televisions. They had no radios. They had nothing except their imaginations. So they had very, very powerful imaginations. Don't forget, there were some scenes prior to this where when they were at the funeral that one of those people envisioned him walking with the dead woman, hand in hand. I don't know if you were going to make a movie of this, I don't know a director that would even think of that unless the third-person narrator scripted it like that. Anyway, so it's before his heart, the symbol of a fearful secret between him and them. There's the word secret again. Does he have a secret? He's smiling. I don't know if he's got a secret. Were the veil but cast aside, if only they would move it, right? They could speak freely about it, but not until then. So they sat there for a long time, speechless, confused, and shrinking uneasily from Mr. Hooper's eye. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, they can't see his eyes. The veil is between him and them. They can't see his eyes, but it's like he's looking at them. It's like, a two-way mirror when you look at, police interrogations. Someone's behind there, but you can't see them, but they see you. Imagine going through life like that, where you think you're being watched, but you can't see who's watching you. You know that there's somebody doing that right now. Kidding. No, I'm not. So they sat there for a while, which they felt to be fixed on them with an invisible glance. And finally, the deputies returned abashed to their constituents, pronouncing the matter, "It's too weighty. We couldn't handle it." Except by the Council of Churches. It might require a general synod. In other words, let's escalate this. You've heard the word escalate when you're dealing with customer service people these days. We've got to escalate your claim, Jim. Right? But there was one person in the village unappalled by awe with which the black veil impressed all but herself. So there's one person. Who is this person? Right? It's a woman as his plighted wife. We know he's a bachelor, and suddenly we read, as his plighted wife, it should be her privilege to know what the black veil concealed. Pardon me. Wait a minute, Jimmy. Does that mean there's a mistake? Has the third person been lying to us? Well, that means we can't believe any of this story. Let's stop reading and throw it out. No, you don't want to do that. You want to read what the word plighted means. Mr. Hooper's here. Mr. Hooper is described as a bachelor in the beginning. Suddenly, he's got a plighted wife. What does this contradiction mean? Well, plighted is the key. It's an adjective modifying wife. Remember, in all of our stories, Jimmy insists that parts of speech, punctuation, everything about the English language, which is why Jimmy can't pronounce foreign words sometimes, everything about the English language is important when you're reading, when you're reading with your reading voice. And in this case, the word plighted, the third person narrator is the omniscient narrator. She always tells the truth. There cannot be a story written in third person where there's a lie. So therein lies the rub. That's what you have to understand. And if you concluded that this story, wait, he's a bachelor, now he's married. No. Plighted. What does plighted mean? Plighted means pledged or a promise solemnly to be one faithful to loyal, to be engaged. He's engaged, ladies and gentlemen. Hooper is engaged. That's his fiancée. That's the woman we're talking about, his fiancée. You see? Without understanding that word, the entire meaning is lost. If he would have just said what as his wife, then you know something's amiss, something's wrong. He made a critical error. The third person narrator, the writer, made a critical error, but he didn't. It's the plighted wife. It's the engaged. She's not his wife yet. He's a bachelor, but this is his fiancée. So if you remember this part of the story, she really realized she's not afraid because she's his fiancée. She knows this guy, right? So she says, no, smiling, there is nothing terrible in this piece of crepe except that it hides that a face that I am always glad to look on. So she loves him, right? There's a love here. He loves her. He sits down. Come on, good sir. Come, good sir. Fiancée addressing her partner. She doesn't say, Mr. Hooper uses his first name. Come, good sir. Let the sun shine behind the cloud. Lay aside your black veil and then tell me why you put it on. There's the woman with the courage. There she is. These other people want to do a church synod. Hey, when it escalated, hey, you come right out and say, come on. Hooper's smile glimmered faintly. He's smiling. Remember, there's that smile again. There is an hour to come, he says, when all of us shall cast aside our veils. Key point. Take it not amiss, beloved friend, if I wear this piece of crepe until then. Take it not amiss. Don't misinterpret why I'm doing this. Beloved friend, you are my beloved friend, my fiance, my wife-to-be. And she says, your words are a mystery too, returned the young lady. Take away the veil from them. Just remove the veil. Elizabeth, there's the lady's name. I will. Now he's first person. He calls her by name, much more intimate. Not good sir, right? Not my beloved friend, Elizabeth. There's something about using a first person name, the name of a person when you're talking to them. Dale Carnegie wrote a great book on this. Calling people by their first name endears you to them. It solidifies the personal relationship. So he says, Elizabeth, I will, so far as my vow may suffer me. So now we got a vow involved. He took a vow. What vow was that? Do we know yet? The third person hasn't told us. Know then, key point, this veil is a type and a symbol. There he is. So Hooper's telling his fiancée what this veil is. It's a symbol. And I am bound to wear it ever, forever. In light and darkness, in solitude and before the gaze of the multitudes, and as with strangers, as with my fellow friends. He's bound to wear this forever. No mortal eye will see it withdrawn. This is a vow. This dismal shade, this veil, now it's a dismal shade, must separate me from the world. Even you, Elizabeth, can never come behind it. Holy moly! Holy moly! This is a serious vow. He's telling his fiancée, you're never going to see my face again. Now, we all understand what happens when you get married, but this guy's pretty serious, right? So she says, what grievous affliction hath befallen you? See how they talk? Beautiful, isn't it? What she earnestly inquired, that you should thus darken your eyes forever. She thinks it's only about the eyes. But don't forget, it's his face. His whole face, except for the slight smile, right? So she says, what kind of, are you sick? What kind of disease? If it be a sign of mourning, replied Hooper, I, perhaps like most other mortals, have sorrows dark enough to be typified by a black veil. If it be a sign of mourning, if I've got sorrows enough to typify this veil like other people, okay? But what if the world will not believe that it is the type of innocent sorrow? Innocent sorrow, what does that mean? Well, you can't be that bad of a guy. It's an innocent sorrow. Maybe you feel you're guilty because you had bad thoughts or whatever. We don't know. We're going to talk about sin in the analysis. But she's saying, what if the world won't believe that it's this type of sorrow? You know, well, she urges Elizabeth, beloved and respected as you are, there may be whispers that you hide your face under the consciousness of a secret sin. There's that word again. Maybe people will start whispering that you've committed some secret sin. And then she begs them, for the sake of your holy office, do away with this scandal. This is scandal. The color rose into her cheeks as she intimated the nature of the rumors that were already abroad in the village. They're already saying it. But Mr. Hooper's mildness did not forsake him. He even smiled again. You see? Is he nuts, ladies and gentlemen? Has he lost it? He's smiling, and his fiancée is begging him to just take the mask, take this veil off. People are going to be talking about this. The same sad smile which always appeared like a faint glimmering light preceding the obscurity. If I hide my face for sorrow, there's cause enough, he said. He merely replied. And if I cover it for a secret sin, what mortal might not do the same? You see, it's not a secret sin necessarily. It's because he's sad. Could be because he's sad, but it doesn't matter. Either one, it doesn't matter. I'm covering my face. And with this gentle but unconquerable obstinacy, did he resist all her entreaties. She's begging him. She's entreating with him. So she finally sits down and for a few moments appeared lost in thought. She's thinking about it. She's trying her best. What new methods can I get this guy to listen to me? Is he suffering from a mental disease? Though a firmer character of his own, the tears roll down her cheek. She's crying. She's crying. And who can blame her? Who can blame her? It's her fiancé, and he's talking like a madman, right? But in an instant, right, as it were, a new feeling took place of sorrow. Her eyes were fixed insensibly on the black veil. So she's just kind of like gazing at it. Did you ever stare without purpose? When suddenly a twilight in the air, its tremors, before we go on, right? You can look at some of these notes. Tells a man who goes to the museum, motionless, all sorts of tiny things, but fails to notice the elephant in the room, blah, blah, blah. She arose and stood trembling before him. And she was trying everything. She stopped. She cried. She stopped crying. She stands up and said, look, she's been looking at the veil. And suddenly she rose, trembling before Hooper. And he goes, and now do you feel it then at last? Said he mournfully. What's it? I circled that word. That's a pronoun. Remember, pronouns, very important. And he says to her, now do you feel it finally? Do you finally feel it? He said mournfully, do you feel it? Do you feel it? She made no reply, but covered her eyes with her hand and turned to leave the room. He rushed forward and caught her arm. Have patience with me, Elizabeth, he cries passionately. Don't desert me. Though this veil must be between us here on earth, be mine. Hereafter there shall be no veil on my face, no darkness. It is but a mortal veil. It's not for eternity. Or, not how lonely I am. Very important. Don't leave me. You know how lonely I am and how frightened to be alone behind my black veil. I told you when he put that on, he cut himself off from everybody, right? He's alone. He's alone. And he's afraid to be alone. And he's begging his fiancée, don't desert me. This is just the veil. It's physical. It's nothing to do with eternity. Don't leave me in this miserable obscurity. Lift the veil once and look at me in the face. Just do it once. She's begging this guy. Never, it cannot be, never. Then farewell. And she withdrew her arm from his grasp and slowly departed, pausing at the door to give one last shuddering gaze that seemed almost to penetrate the mystery of the black veil. But even amid his grief, Hooper smiled to think that only a material emblem had separated him from his happiness, though the horrors which it shadowed forth must be drawn darkly between the fondest of lovers. It's a sad scene. It's a sad scene. Well, Jimmy, this is crazy. People don't do this. Really? You really believe people don't do and let material things come between them? You really believe that? Have you looked at the divorce rate in the United States? Have you looked at that? There's all sorts of things that come between people. All sorts of things, not just black veils. From that time on, no attempts were made to remove his veil. Okay. He became a bugbear. Bugbear, what's that? An imaginary being, frightened children. It's like a hobgoblin. He became not a pariah. A pariah is a person who is avoided, not accepted by the social group. You could say he's somewhat of a pariah, right? He's not accepted. But it's just an eccentric whim. Others would make it a point of hardihood to throw themselves in his way. That's very important. He walked around, he became like a sideshow, right? Some people would make it a point of throwing themselves in front of him, right? That's what this says, the third person narrator. The impertinence of this compelled him to give up his customary walk. He was so confronted like that, he just stopped walking around. So people are just reacting to him as a bugbear or a pariah, right? This guy's nuts. Okay, it's eccentric. We'll just have to put up with it. A fable went around that the stare of the dead people drove him thence. He used to look at the gravestones, etc. Okay? Their instinctive dread caused him to feed more strongly, blah, blah, blah. What else but a preternatural horror? So modifying that, this is what is normal or natural. Preternatural. Their instinctive dread caused him to feel more strongly than aught else that a preternatural horror was interwoven with the threads of the black crape. Now all of a sudden the veil is mysteriously, it's unnatural. His own antipathy, which is deep-seated feeling and aversion to the veil, was known, so great he never passed by a mirror. He hated it so much he couldn't stand seeing himself with that. Right? This was what the plausibility of whispers, Mr. Cooper's conscience, the ambiguity, right, of sin or sorrow. It's horrible. Nobody knows. We'll just put up with him. He's eccentric, right? Even the lawless wind, it was believed, respected the dreadful secret. There it is again. He's got to have a secret. But Mr. Hooper just smiled sadly. He just smiled sadly. But one good thing happened because of the veil. Here we go, right? So, yeah, okay, he's nuts. We'll just put up with him. But there was one good thing. He became a very efficient clergyman. Listen, you read the story with me, right? You know what I'm talking about. He became super pastor, right? He became a man of awful power over souls that were in agony for sin. What does that mean? I'm a sinner. You know, he became he had power. Affirming, though but figuratively, that he brought them to the celestial light. Anybody who was dying cried out for Mr. Hooper. I'm dying. Bring the pastor. Bring the Reverend Mr. Hooper. If they're dying, they believe this guy's connected, right? So bring him over. Even when death had bared his visage, right? Such were the terrors of the black veil, even when death had barred his vision. Strangers came from long distances to attend his service. This guy's becoming a legend. Once Governor Belcher's, right, administration, Mr. Hooper was appointed to preach the, election sermon. Covered with his black veil, he stood before the chief magistrate, all the big shots, right, and delivered with all the gloom and piety of the earliest. He just was unbelievable. He was a great preacher. And so the narrator tells us he spent a long life, irreproachable. By the way, here's a note on Governor Belcher to give you a sense of the time of when this may be taking place. And he was a famous colonial governor. He served the governor of New Jersey. He was also the governor of New Hampshire and Massachusetts, Jonathan Belcher. He lived in 1681 to 82. So now we have a sense of when this story may be taking place. It's not the 1800s. It's the 1600s in Milford. Got it? Okay. So now it's late in life. He's dying. The years wore on. He became known as Father Hooper. Wow, Father Hooper. So he's dying now. He's on his deathbed. The physician is coming in, the Reverend Mr. Clark of Westbury, the nurse, who was, by the way, Elizabeth. Elizabeth stood with him. She never married him, but she took care of him, right? She's, in a sense, she's like Penelope in the Odyssey. She sticks with him, right? So it's the saddest of all prisons, his own heart. That's a beautiful line. Let me read that. All through his life, that piece of crape had hung between him and the world. It had separated him from cheerful brotherhood and woman's love and kept him in the saddest of all prisons, his own heart. And it still lay upon his face, as if to deepen the gloom and darksome chamber and shade with, from the sunshine of eternity. So he's dying, he's laying in bed, dying, and he's got that veil on, that darn veil, still there. So the care and concern of the right solicitude, they're there, they care about him, they're feeling bad for him. The minister of Westbury approached his bedside and he talks to him. That's one of the ministers, the Reverend Clark. And he says, before I do that, this word here, the old man lay quietly in a torpor, state of physical and mental inactivity, lethargic. He's dying. He's just dying. He can't move. He's just, So here comes Westbury saying, Venerable Father Hooper, the moment of your release is at hand. Are you ready for the lifting of the veil that shuts in thy time in time from eternity? Are you ready? Father Hooper at first merely replied with a feeble motion of his head, and then apprehensively, perhaps, that his meaning might not be doubtful, he decided to speak. He said, maybe you don't understand what I'm letting my head for. Yea, said he, in the faintest accents, my soul hath a patient weariness until the veil is lit. Yes, I'm ready to go. It's fitting, said Mr. Reverend Clark, that a man so given to prayer, of such blameless example, holy in deed and thought, so far as mortal judgment may pronounce, it is fitting that a father of the church should leave a shadow on his memory that may seem to blacken a life so pure. You really want to do this? I pray you, venerable brother, let not this thing be. Let gladden everybody around me. And before that veil of eternity is lifted, let me put aside this black veil. Before the veil of eternity is lifted, right? Now there's two veils, right? The veil of eternity and his veil. Let me lift his veil. And Reverend Clark does speaking. He leans forward, right, to take the veil off. But exerting a sudden energy that made everybody stand aghast, Father Hooper snatched both of his hands, Westbury's hands, from beneath the bedclothes, from his bedclothes rather, and he pressed them strongly on the black veil, resolute to struggle if the minister of Westbury would try to contend with this dying man. Never, cried the veiled clergyman. On earth, never. Holy cow. Now the minister says, dark old man, with what horrible crime upon your soul are you now passing to judge? What the heck did you do that you're not going to reveal your face and you're going to in eternity without revealing your face to us? Father Hooper's breath heaved, a rattle in his throat, the death rattle. But with a mighty effort, grasping forward with his hands, he caught hold of life. He's not dead yet, right? And he sits up, shivering his arms. Death is on him. He's shivering. He sits up. And there was that faint, sad smile, right? So often seen on him. Why do you tremble at me alone? Cried Hooper, turning his veiled face around the room. Why are you trembling at me alone? Why are you so afraid? Tremble also at each other. This is one of the most important paragraphs in the story. Tremble at each other. Have men avoided me? and women shown no pity, and children screamed and fled only for my black veil? What but the mystery, which is obscurely typifies, has made this piece of crepe so awful? So the mystery it typifies. When the friend shows his inmost heart to his friend, the lover to his best beloved, when man does not vainly shrink from the eye of his creator, lonesomely treasuring up the secret of his sin, then deem me a monster. For the symbol beneath which I have lived and die. I look around me, and lo, on every visage, face, I see a black veil. When his auditors shrank from one another in mutual affright, Father Hooper fell back on his pillow, a veiled corpse, with a faint smile lingering on his lips. There it is again. Still veiled, they laid him in his coffin, and a veiled corpse they bore to the grave. And the grass of many years has sprung up and withered on that grave. The burial stone is moss-grown, and good Mr. Hooper's face is dust. But awful is still the thought that it moldered beneath the black veil. Okay, symbols. The black veil is a symbol of secret sin and how terrible human nature can be, says one person. I don't believe it. This could represent the secret sin that all people carry in their hearts, or it could be representation of Hooper's specific sin. The Puritans believe God has chosen a few people, the elect, for salvation. The rest of humanity was condemned. If they're Puritans, we believe, you can assume it, Calvinists. It's not, you can just tell the way they dress, the way they talk. In any case, what's this story about? Well, when we finish this analysis, part 2, there's a whole interpretation I would like your comments on when you study it. But it's easy to say that this is a story about secret sin. If you Google it, you're going to find out most people think this is about a secret sin. Jimmy doesn't. If it was about a secret sin, there would have been evidence of a secret sin someplace in here. There is no secret sin. He took the veil on himself. He took a vow to wear the veil for some reason. What was that reason? Why did he do this? What was Hooper's motivation is what you have to figure out. Motivation is central to the understanding and appreciation of any story. And since this is third-person narration, we have to use the evidence of the narrator, who has to be believed, and use our own interpretation. We can speculate that it is a Puritan culture, but there's no evidence. We can speculate it's a sin to be defined, but there is no evidence. So what is the interpretation of this story? Why did he do this, and what is that veil? What is that veil? Well, I want you to tune into the analysis of my interpretation of that, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you're going to say it's a secret sin, you have to define the word sin, because secret is modifying the word sin. It's an adjective, right? So you have to understand what sin is, and you're going to have to define your words. Aristotle taught us that. Define your words. If you don't define your words, you and I, Jimmy and you and Jimmy, will not have anything in common to talk about. So we can speculate all we want, but it really boils down to defining your words, finding the evidence in the story of what the heck this was all about, and what was Hooper's motivation for putting on this veil. Because he put it on not when he was born, not when he started preaching, but sometime during his, preaching, right? One day he wore his veil and put the whole village in a turmoil. Then he became bugbear, right? A pariah. Nobody, okay, he's just crazy. But yet that veil gave him a power of speech unlike any other. So strangers would come to town. So it's something else. And remember this, I'll give you a clue. The veil comes between him and his flock. He can see them, they can't see him. That's very important, that a veil that he can see them, but they cannot see him. Or is it him that they are looking at. What is that veil? Hmm. Hmm. This is Jimmy. You've been reading with Jimmy. This is part 2 of 2-part analysis of Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Minister's Black Veil. Email me, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. And please check out my interpretation and analysis of this beautiful story by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Thanks again. See you soon.